I don't think our objective was ever to make the company one of the fastest growing companies. I think it was really more of a, how do we operate as best we can given what's in front of us and take the opportunities when they come. Because of our experience, because of our background, we just knew it was right, and then it was a matter of pulling the trigger.
It was pretty magical to grow up here in Hawaii on the beach.
My parents came here to Hawaii in 1929 because my father lost his job in Los Angeles and he could not find a job in the Southern California area, so somebody said they heard that an architect named Pop Dickey needed a draftsman in Hawaii, and they exchanged a couple of cables, and all of a sudden they were on a boat headed for Hawaii.
Roy and Estelle gave us a great legacy. If you think about what kind of entrepreneurial guts it took to move to the territory of Hawaii and develop, I think he developed 16 or 19 buildings where he designed, built, paid for, all on his own. And that's an extraordinary entrepreneurism that you just don't see in today's world.
My dad was born in the territory of Hawaii and lived a very, very different life. When he went to college, it was a completely different world for him to experience. And certainly going to Stanford the way he did was an incredible opportunity for him. And I'm sure it was life-changing for him in many ways. He was a medical doctor when I was growing up. That was his primary occupation, and he was starting to get pulled into the family business somewhat. So he was doing a little of this hotel work, but much of my younger years, he was a pathologist at Queens Hospital.
The entire Kelley family, they're hardworking people. They're very humble, down to earth, and they are extremely generous in the community, and they're just nice people, all of them.
Richard was a soft-spoken, low-key, very, very helpful to people, and he was that way to everyone, whether you were a maid or a millionaire.
My dad always valued education, and he always stressed the importance of getting an education for girls as well as boys.
He probably had more women working for him from early days in high-powered positions, and most of us who were women never forgot that.
As soon as we could reliably read, write, and count, we were working in the hotels during the summers. It might be folding towels, it might be counting checks, it might be doing reservations. We learned to really value the lowest levels of an operation, because that's what really counts. If the rooms aren't clean, if the air conditioner doesn't work, if a guest doesn't have a great front desk check-in, that colors their entire experience, not just at the hotel, but in Hawaii.
I was dating my wife in college, and she said, why don't you come out and visit? Her dad had a sailboat, I think he was a Cal 20, and went sailing off Waikiki, which was fabulous. And I said to him, this is lovely, I really like Hawaii. I wouldn't mind moving here after I graduate, at least for a while. Do you have any idea how I could get a job here? And he says, oh yeah, we have lots of jobs, we're happy to put you to work. And I had no idea at the time that the company had all these hotels. And so I came out here and began working for the hotels. My first job was on the front desk of one of the hotels, and then I did cashier, assistant manager, relief manager, I did time and reservations. And then after work, I started even going into doing stuff in the computer room. My father-in-law bought a new computer system at the time, and he said, hey David, go figure out how this thing works.
David was always bright, he's very smart, he was motivated, and he's always been very caring about other people. That certainly has played out in the business world, where he was always very concerned about his employees and the people he worked with. My father really took an entrepreneurial business that my grandparents had started and started professionalizing it. And then when David came in, he took it even further. He took it international.
Richard had a phenomenal capacity for details and how to find things, and I was probably more in the strategic and what's the right thing to do. So, he would have some ideas about how to get something or do something, and then it was my job to make sure that it got done. We just sort of had an understanding that we wouldn't do major things unless both of us agreed that it was the right thing to do.
A very close-knit family, from the very onstart with their grandfather, Roy Kelley, and Estelle Kelley, and then it moved on up. And I thought they were such a beautiful group of people. They sort of helped each other.
In Roy and Estelle's day, everybody felt like family. Richard then took it the next level up because we went from probably 400 employees to 2,000 employees in Waikiki. And at one time, Richard interviewed every single employee who applied. We set about systematically creating an environment where people felt like they were part of the family. How does a small company like ours compete? What do we have that's different? Well, what we have is we're in Hawaii, and Hawaii has this really special culture here.
I think what Richard and David and the Kelley family set as a legacy, internally we call it the Outrigger Way, and it's a family values and a family-led approach. And it's so strong in the DNA of the company that you just can't extract it.
I felt that I was part of this huge organization, and I was treated so very well. And that's the reason why I remained for as long as I did, for 61 years.
When I started in 1995, it was primarily a company that was headquartered in Waikiki. Waikiki at the time had about 30,000 hotel rooms. Outrigger had about 1/4 of all the hotel rooms in Waikiki. Waikiki has half of the hotel rooms in the state. So it's a major force. And just walking around Waikiki, I began to realize there are millions and millions and millions of dollars that are transacted here every single day. That's when it really hits you about how important the visitor industry is to our economy.
We hadn't done any new renewal projects in Waikiki, and there were some things that need to be changed. And Outrigger was a major landowner along what is called Lewis Street.
As we consolidated the property for the Waikiki Beach Walk, we had to buy each one of those little individual lots and trace down the ownership of that remnant of an old service road that ran in the back of it. It was a tremendous amount of work to do that and get it, negotiate with people that did have the rights.
So the feeling was, oh no, you're gonna put more high-rises, more skyscrapers. We don't need that in Waikiki. So it was a novel concept at that time. But when I understood what David and his group were trying to do, I basically said, you know what, I'm on board.
And one of the first proposals that I made was to turn the whole area into a consolidated, uniform area. And I had a vision that we were going to make like a gaslight area out of it, with carriages going and gas lights on the lamp posts and so forth. And over a period of time that evolved into where the beach walk came out now. So it's sort of a uniform, pedestrian-friendly, far more open space. We took this piece of property, it was about 8 acres. We had 3,100 rooms, which was more than 10% of all the hotel rooms in Waikiki. We had 11 hotels. We transformed it into a beautiful sparkling jewel that really led the renaissance of Waikiki. In rough numbers, the value of the properties went from about 250 million to about 1.7 billion in that one area.
They were visionary leaders. They saw that if they sat back and said, well, let's let someone else do it, it may not happen.
I have this vivid, spooky memory of sitting in a ballroom, and there are about 200 employees in front of us, and the news guy at 11 a.m. said this Category 5 storm is coming to Honolulu, 200-mile-an-hour winds. And I remember thinking, and I had this feeling in the pit of my stomach, if that storm comes here, we're done. If we have all our eggs in one basket, granted it's a great basket, it would be just prudent on behalf of the family to have some assets and operations in other places.
We bought property in Mauritius, the Maldives. We were in Phuket already.
We were in Fiji in a couple of places. We signed contracts for Vietnam, Hainan Island, China. We were looking at Okinawa. We had been in Tahiti.
By the time we were finished, we had 15 properties in Australia, 3 in New Zealand. We had a management contract in Guam. We wanted to be in such a place so no one property, no one country, no one currency, or no one source market would take the company down.
Obviously, over the years, many challenges, 9/11, hurricane events, weather events. I mean, tourism is a challenging, business, and we're often at the mercy of those types of events. In the last, I think, year and a half, we had a false nuclear missile launch. We had multiple hurricanes. We had a volcano erupt on Hawaii Island. So Hawaii's not only a precarious place, but it's certainly not immune to potential disasters. So there's challenges, some that are predictable and some that are not.
Some folks might have pulled up stakes and left elsewhere. Nobody could have done that. I like the fact that even though they were investing in the Pacific, I thought that was really important. Whether it was in Guam or in Fiji and some of these other areas, Hawaii was still home base for them.
He was the force behind getting a convention center for Hawaii. He was part for many years of the World Travel and Tourism Council, WTTC, and he would travel all over the world to talk to others in the industry and bring that back to the industry in Hawaii.
I spend an awful lot of my time traveling around the world, so I will understand what's going on. And I still think that Waikiki is one of the most exciting, vibrant, pleasant, enjoyable resort areas in the world.
We've tried to instill in our own kids, just like my dad and mom instilled in us, that an education is really the key to so much in life.
I think in David's case, at his level of leadership, the expectation is to serve on board. So, among many commitments he's made is he's the chair of the Military Affairs Committee, which effectively is the highest ranking civilian in the state. David was even hosting barbecues for members of the military in his backyard every October. And one of the biggest commitments he's made is to the Punahou School. I'd argue that Punahou K through 12 is the most spectacular set of facilities in the world for a K through 12 type of undergraduate program. And he actually put that into motion and drove the process from the grounds, the facilities themselves.
They've reached out to areas throughout Oahu where folks come from disadvantaged backgrounds, and they've cast that wide net to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to have the finest education.
Dr. Kelley, you have had a profound, extraordinary, exemplary impact on Hawaii. I want to congratulate you, David, for all of your successes and achievements.
The one common thing that they shared was this ability to make things happen. I think they're going to be so fondly remembered, and they're very deserving of this award. Congratulations, Doc. Congratulations, David.
Without you and Dr. Kelley, we wouldn't have a Hawaii Convention Center. We wouldn't have a tourism authority. We wouldn't have a burgeoning industry here with 220,000 people employed, a $16 billion industry in the state of Hawaii, these small 8 islands in the middle of the Pacific. So you've made a big impact here. I think David would be the first to say that he's been successful in his career, and Richard, I think, would echo the same sentiment, not just because of what they've accomplished, but I think because of who they are. Not just as CEOs and leaders, but as fathers and as husbands.
I'm incredibly proud of both my dad and David. They've taken something that my grandparents started and grown it with those values that were so important. They've cared for their community, they've cared for the people who worked with them, and created this amazing hotel company that has touched lives across the globe.